I'm here today with Megan and Safi, but they're Saffron and Megan. They both have worked in the film industry for 4+ years now, and we actually all met on our first film job, which is quite cool. But could you both tell me a bit about, like, give yourself a proper introduction and maybe tell me a bit about both of you, such as what made you want to work in the film industry?
I'll go first. Hello, my name is Saffron, but everyone calls me Safi. And I've been working in the editorial department of the British film industry for the last 4 years, focusing on feature film, just generally high budget. And I started out that way due to a BFI trainee scheme. I studied at the BFI Film Academy back in 2019, and it's a course aimed at 16 to 19-year-olds. And I knew I wanted to do it at that point. So the fact that I could apply and thankfully got accepted meant I could have a bit of hands-on training and then the chance to apply for further opportunities down the line. Rejection is a normal thing in this industry, but eventually I got redirected to an interview where I happened to be offered a job, which was wonderful. In terms of why I picked editorial, it's funnily enough, I started out like as a YouTuber. It feels so weird to say that, but it got to the point where I was earning the tiniest amount of money. And I found that I really enjoyed editing the videos I shot. And it was all really dumb stuff, you know, it was all like home videos and silly skits that I'd write out by myself and I'd play every role. And the bit I enjoyed the most was putting it together and editing around myself. And so that's where the idea came from. And here I am.
Oh, so interesting though. And then obviously I know Meg, you've come in a little bit of a different way because you started off in art, right?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Megan. Originally I was first like interested in film when I was about 9 or 10, because my dad was working in the film industry at the time, and he took me on the set of Centrillions, and I saw like all the sets, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, how do I get into this? Then yeah, I went to Nottingham Trent University and I studied design for film and TV there. And really, I got really lucky. It was really random. Like, they had like this pizza van at Pinewood Studios. We had like a little open day with all of our work out, and I got talking to this guy, and we had the same number for a pizza. And it just so happens that he was working on Batman at the time. And yeah, I gave him my CV. And a couple months later, I ended up in my first film in art department. And then I worked in art department throughout COVID until 2021. And then again, by pure coincidence, I lived with a lady at the time who was a medic in the industry. And her friend came over and she was like, I work in like sort of creatures, and yeah, would I like to have like a trial day? So I had a trial day and I made some dead bodies. Yeah, and then I went into prosthetics from there, and I still currently make dead bodies and horses for films. So it's been an interesting journey, but yeah, very
Can
interesting.
we sorry, you said you went on the Centrillions set, as
Yeah.
in the best British film ever.
Yeah, when I was really young, and I was just like, oh my God, I want to do
Um,
this.
I do actually want to pull up because I know you also worked on a One Direction Perfume ad.
When I was 16, yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. Yeah, I was like
You,
fangirling.
yeah, you've lived a lot of people's dreams with just them two alone. Um, I find it quite interesting that you both did different training as well. So obviously, Safi, you said you did BFI Academy, and then Meg, you did Nottingham Trent. So you went the uni route, and then you've done and I also know you work a lot with BFI still, don't you, Saf?
Yeah, I've gone back to
Yeah,
kind of be the post-production tutor for the academy, which is a really nice full circle moment.
yeah, it's quite nice. But also, do you think, like, between the both of you, do you think you should get a degree to go into the industry, or do you think there is absolutely no need? Could you just go straight in?
As much as I enjoyed my degree, I don't necessarily think that you need it. I actually think it's probably better to try and apply for things like screen skills and see if you can get in that way, because then I think
Yeah.
you build up more of a portfolio and you get more experience over the years being a runner on like things, rather than trying to get in when you've done 3 years at uni. It's quite stressful as well because you finish uni and you've been doing it for 3 years, and suddenly you're just thrown into, I need to find a job, like it has to be this specific thing, otherwise you feel like, I've done this degree and now, like, do I go into this or do I do something completely different? But you don't want to almost waste that degree. So yeah, I think actually if I could relive it, I would probably just go straight in and start applying for things, or like all the Facebook groups that they have. Obviously it's word of mouth is how you learn about all these different opportunities, but I do think talking about it and definitely a good thing.
Yeah, there's definitely, with universities, I think there's so much positive with life experience. And unless if you end up going to probably Met or even like Bournemouth Art, it's very you can just do film anywhere, or film production or film editing, script writing, and it might not give you all the leeway to get in. So I think you're right. Yeah, I always recommend like Production Guild as well, Production Guild, Screen Skills, BFI. They always do some amazing things. Do you agree with that, Saffron? Do you feel like, because I know that's the route you went with?
On the whole, I would agree. I think it depends, I guess, where you're at in your stage of life and you as a person. Because if you're someone that's not fully sure what you want to do, or you perhaps have a really big interest in, say, English literature, because someone I used to work with in Editorial did an English lit degree, and it's something they wanted to do, but then later ended up going into film. So I think it's important to remember that there's no right route. It's whatever you feel is right for you. So going to uni and getting that life experience, it's a whole thing. It's not just getting your degree. It's a whole way of life, and you learning how to live by yourself for 3 years. It can be important, but in terms of the expectation of thinking, oh, I'll come out with a job guaranteed at the end, I find that's not to be the case statistically. So if you are someone that really wants to work in film and you're dead set on what it is exactly you want to do, you're much better off applying for the Screen Skills. I'll try that again. You're much better off applying for the Screen Skills Trainee Finder, which is you just apply. The BFI does have a trainee thing, and I do take a little bit of like a bugbear with it, and they do know, but it's unless you've done an academy, you can't access this scheme, which is why I'm trying to push Screen Skills if you're very new to this. But if you are of the ages of 16 to 19, absolutely go for the BFI Film Academy, because it will offer you like a chance to open more doors.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's always just interesting hearing other people's point of view on that. I'm just going to dive into your credits for a second, because obviously us three all met on a film called Infinite, which was filmed in the UK. It was filmed it was like Brentford, Acton way, wasn't it, in West London?
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, it was a Paramount film. It actually came out in 2021, but we filmed it early 2020, I believe, because we all went on it and then the COVID hit.
I think
2019.
Yeah,
it
was only 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, I finished in February. That's why.
Yeah, you continued on.
I continued on.
Rub it in.
So yeah, I met you guys because I was in the accounts team. It was my first ever job, and we were all basically trainees. We all kind of like met. So I know it was also pretty much all of our official proper first credit, wasn't it? Like, I know you both worked on shorts. Obviously, main thing, Megan, you worked on a One Direction You and I fragrance commercial, which I think is absolutely just, you have to tell everyone that one. But also you end up working on Maleficent as a art department assistant around the same, was it just before?
Yeah, so that was only for like a few days.
Yeah, so that's
amazing.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I do, whenever I try to talk to people about working in the industry, I always say at first, you are probably only going to do days here, days there, get your foot in the door, get your name there. But yeah, so yeah, we worked on Infinite. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great first film for us, all three of us to, I remember us both basically just going to get food at like 7, 8 o'clock quite often. But Saffron, you then went on to work on Batman, that I remember you kept from us for a very long time.
Yeah, I didn't say anything.
No,
a lot
very
of my
proud.
friends had no clue until the film got released, just because I knew I knew that if I said anything, they just harassed me about it, and I obviously don't want to say anything, and I'm very, I was early into the industry at this point, so I was like, I'm just going to say nothing. And you know what, generally, if I'm on a job, I generally won't say anything till the job's done or the job is out, just to avoid people bugging me about it, basically. But yeah, I kept it below the radar.
No, honestly, you did amazing. But you were on that for a very long time, because I know that there was because there was a bit of a break, was there, in the middle? Because I just remember you for about a year you were on Batman, and this is the Batman from 2022, and then you ended up being on Men. And what did you do back to back? So also, just to say that you started off as an editorial production assistant, because that was obviously, we all said that we all kind of started in the same, that sort of level. But when you went to the Batman, you were a trainee editor.
Yeah, here's the wild thing about like editorial. I can't speak for other like branches, so Megs, feel free to chime in here. But at least on the editorial side of things, like trainee and production assistant mean the same thing. So for Infinite, which was my first official contracted job, I was an editorial production assistant, and then on Batman, I was the editorial trainee, I think is my IMDb credit. But they're the same roles, so it wasn't like I stepped up or I stepped down. It's just the same word for the same responsibilities. And I maintained that kind of trainee status for a total of 3 films, which is pretty normal for, I think, editorial. Because it went Infinite, and then Batman, and then my 3rd film was the A24 film Men, and that was my last trainee role. And then the most recent thing I worked on, having been quite a while since I worked on it, in all honesty, was Civil War, and that I stepped up to be an assistant editor for.
Yeah, I've been hearing really good reviews of Civil War, because I know that came out quite recently. I actually was going to say to you that I actually have the poster if you want it, if you didn't end up with one.
I've been trying to get one from my local cinema, so I
have one,
source one elsewhere.
Have it.
But if I'm stuck, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, and obviously I know you've done some independent stuff as well, but and then Meg, you were obviously, like I said, we all started on Infinite, but then you had a bit of a Marvel wave, didn't you? Because you ended up on Doctor Strange, into the Multiverse of Madness, and then the Marvels for a while, both as art department assistants. How was that? Like, where were you located and stuff for them?
So I got pretty lucky. I met a really nice group of people on Infinite in the art department, and I got a message one day, and they were like, "Oh, we're looking for an assistant. Would you like to come in for an interview?" So I had an interview, and I ended up working on Doctor Strange for about a year, just under a year, at Long Cross. That was really good. I think the highlight for me, I got given a little bicycle that I could like deliver all the drawings. So I'd like cycle around Long Cross, feeling like that witch from Wizard of Oz, just like throwing. And then I went on to the Marvels, I think a couple of months later, and that was at Pinewood. So that was really good. It was good to be at Pinewood. I had multiple breakdowns about my car parking there. Many incidents with it being damaged, but Pinewood overall was a really good experience. I loved the fact that there was a nice array of places to buy nice food. You don't have the option in Long Cross, there's very limited facilities. But it was really good fun. I had a really nice team as well, and again, most of the team from the previous films moved on to the Marvels as well, so I already knew quite a few of them, which was nice.
I know there's definitely because obviously there's quite a lot of the main, we've got this like Pinewood, Leavesden, the big ones in London, and then obviously we all end up working at Gillette Studios, which was probably one of the grimmest studios you could work at. And I worked there twice. I worked there back to back, which was very interesting with the rats.
And the asbestos.
And it's definitely like not a lot of studio space in London, so I think they're building a lot of random places. But do you enjoy studio? And then obviously Safi, of course, obviously I know your first one you were in the studio with us, but then you've mostly been an edit in studios in Soho, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend job to job. And in terms of set life, you're right. The first one I was with you guys, and I felt it was, you're more in the action Like to walk to the office I was working in, we'd have to like squeeze past like these custom made supercars and walk onto set and just see all the cool like props and like everything that's set up for the day. And then when you are based in a cutting room, okay, it's great that you're in central London, you know, Soho's got so much going on. And I was living in central London at the time, so it worked well for my situation. But you're so far removed from, you know, where they're shooting, so it does feel more insular, but you are quite close to the team and you can still have fun. But it's just a whole different ball game.
Megan, because I know you've now gone into more prosthetics. You ended up working on Napoleon, and you've just worked on Gladiator 2, which I think just them two credits alone, Napoleon and Gladiator 2, are amazing. Do you feel like there's now a shift because you're now more in a warehouse rather than maybe being on set, but also when you're in art, you mostly were just in offices as well?
With being in the actual offices when I was on Doctor Strange, Infinite, Marvels, it was actually like very much split between the set and the office as well. So when I think predominantly Marvels, just because we were sort of in and out of COVID, it was sort of coming to the end. Like we were being tested every single day, but to go on set. But when I was on Doctor Strange, all of the sets were pretty much built in Longcross Studios, whereas for Marvels, there was quite a few locations, which was quite nice. And actually, being on Napoleon was probably one of the best ones because we had multiple different locations across the country. And yeah, and obviously was supposed to go to Malta, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But that would have been amazing as well. And yeah, it's just really interesting because when you're in the office, it's very different to when you're on set. And then also, I quite like now being in a workshop because it's just a lot quieter. You're not having to worry about like what you wear or anything. I turn up every day looking just bare face, no makeup, don't have to bother dressing up nice for anyone. So it's quite nice actually. There's no expectations on that part, and you just get stuck in. So
yeah, because I guess because both of your roles are you know, we're not ADs or sound technicians. Like I think there's so many roles in the industry that both of you, editorial and art, it's very interesting to talk about because I think people always think everyone's on set all the time, and there's so many pieces that go to it into a film or even a high-end TV show. I know we both you guys have mostly just worked on feature films though. So yeah, there's definitely that then element to it as well that I think people forget, that a lot of it can just be sitting in an office or sitting in a warehouse, doing the little bits for the jigsaw of the whole film. Obviously I know this is probably more aimed just towards you, Meg, but is there any tips that you would give to anyone on set to survive a day on a film set?
Get a lot of sleep. Make sure you have food. Definitely make sure you have snacks because you get catering in the morning, which is nice. And then you have to do your lunch run. Make sure you have enough meals for everyone. And yeah, you're just going throughout the whole day until quite late at night, just depending on when you get back. So yeah, the two things that keep us alive: sleep and food.
So what's the most interesting thing you've kind of worked on? Because I know obviously we've known each other many years now, but you've obviously changed in the last few years into this creating dead horses or creating dead bodies. Is there anything that's been quite an interesting tidbit or something that you could tell us about that?
So Napoleon was very varied. Anything from forklift training to we were helping out making like the dead horses. So at the beginning, when I worked with my current boss, we had to make, I think it was about 100 bodies between us. And then she had another team of people making the horses as well for Napoleon. And then when I was on set, we were also like carrying all these dead bodies. And then obviously when it rains on set, those bodies are heavy. So you're literally running up a hill, dragging this thing, trying to get it onto the cart, like trying to throw it, and it just missing completely. It was it was an interesting experience, but it was really good fun. I feel like I missed the second part of the question. So any tips?
Yeah, no, just anything like about like a little memorable moment or anything. But I guess you running uphill with some dead bodies is a one.
Yeah, and I ended up on Daily Mail. I was caught eating a sandwich next to a load of dead bodies. So That's fun.
I need you to send me that.
It's just a picture of me in my hat. I was like trying to hide for 5 minutes to eat this sandwich. It's just a picture of me there. I'm like, why?
Insert picture here.
Yeah. It's a
Iconic
picture. Thank you.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
It was like, so is there also, this is to both of you again, but is there any like people that you've like, obviously, I keep going back to you worked on Batman and you worked on Napoleon, so both of them are like massive films, especially from the British film industry. But is there definitely like people that you've like now worked with and you're like, oh, that's so cool, I worked with them?
Oh God, honestly, so many people, I take my hat off to them because it's a stressful environment for one, but also they manage to, keep the ship afloat and just be remarkable at what they do. I mean, so how it works in editorial is my boss is technically two people. So the person who basically hires me is generally the first assistant editor. The hierarchy tends to go editor, who's head of department, first assistant, second assistant, sometimes as a third assistant, and then like the trainee. So even though it's generally the first that will like manage running the cutting room and they will be just kind of in charge of all the elements, you also have your head of department, the editor, who's in the last, actually probably for all the jobs I've done, they've generally been like either an award winner or like nominated for something. So they're, pretty big in the industry. So they're also your boss in some ways. So you have to answer to both of them. And I just remember, I think it was Infinite, like it was the team of editor and first assistant editor. They were originally from LA. So naturally they won't continue always working in the UK because they go back to America and I can't go over because of visa issues, and they will generally hire a trainee or an assistant out there. But I really liked how they worked. I love how they encouraged to have lunch together, and you wouldn't think like an award winner would be like, oh, I'll just grab a meal deal from Tesco and we can all like munch in the studio together. Like that wasn't, it goes against all of the ideas people have about industry heavyweights. But no, they are quite chill. And then obviously they go back to LA when the job wraps and I can't continue on. But then that's when I got put forward for Batman, and then the boss that then hired me. So the first assistant on Batman is a man called Jens, and we did 3 movies together, and I'd love to work with them again, but I just needed to take some time away from the industry and go traveling for a bit and do all that kind of stuff. Kind of haven't ever done that before, but yeah, I hope that we can work together again in the future. And because he is UK based, generally if you find a team you tend to stick with them, but it can sometimes get complicated if it's like an American team versus a British team, just because of how the rules are with making films and who's allowed to be hired on what and what can be sent overseas and what can't.
Well, I've met a few celebrities, but I think it's not really the celebrities that actually make the film special. I think it's the actual people that you work with, and if you get a nice team, like Safi was saying, it makes it so much nicer. Like in art department, a lot of people don't really have the time to sit down together and have food together, but on Napoleon, a lot of people sort of made sure that they had lunch around the same time. So then sometimes we'd all order in a pizza, or if we were on set, then we'd all go out for a meal, like if we had some time. And that was just really nice. And there's some quite big people that have worked on a lot of big films, and they're all just, at the end of the day, even if you feel a bit starstruck, they're all just normal people. And yeah, when you get to know them, you're just like, wow, it must be it's just so cool when you think about it, like all the massive films they've worked on, but you're literally having like a normal conversation with them. I know it sounds silly, but yeah, I think even like my boss now, she worked on all the Harry Potter films, she did all the creatures. You're gonna hate me for this, what's the owl called? I really haven't watched.
Pigwit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, don't hate me, I really haven't watched like many of them, so don't come for me, like but yeah, she like basically made him, so she's worked on some amazing stuff, but she's just so like down to earth, so easy to talk to. She's just the nicest person I've met. So
I kind of a bit of a 2-part question. Obviously I asked like what it is that made you guys want to go into the industry, and then but have you since then ended up with a bit of a pinch me moment, like any moments maybe when you were like on certain sets that you've worked, or kind of still with these random people that you've worked with? Any moments in your career that's kind of like stuck in your brain?
I don't really have like a pinch me moment, but there was a funny moment where we were on set and I was like, what does Ridley Scott look like? And then he literally walked in front of me as I said it, and he gave me the dirtiest look. I was like, turned the other way. I was like, oh my god. I didn't know. I had to Google him. That's just embarrassing. I was like, oh.
I think I would have done the same thing. Who is Ridley Scott?
Really famous, and I'm still like,
Oh, I can't top that, but
No.
for the sake of answering the question, basically a lot of things on Infinite were a real pinch me moment, because I really wanted to be, part of this industry for so long, and then to kind of stand, like, especially after hours, because I felt like Paramount were quite chill about security. Like, once you showed your badge as security, you were in, but you could just wander around the sets after that. So when it was like, late at night and quiet after work and before I head home, you just stand there and you go, wow, I'm standing on a film set. This is so cool. And the level of craftsmanship that honestly goes into these productions, it's so like amazing. You just don't really realize it until you're there. So that was a real, this is amazing. And also we had that rap party. That's the only rap party I've ever been to. And COVID has messed things up a bit there. But it's like,
yeah, I do think I will ask us about COVID in a moment, but I do think COVID affected a lot, and I think all three of us ended up on that film, which I think we are allowed to say, because I've worked for Paramount since as well, and I do adore working for Paramount. I think they're amazing, but Infinite was such a funny film for us, all three of us, to work on, because no one ever knows it. Whenever I say, oh yeah, it was Infinite, no one knows it. It flopped, basically. I remember it was meant to go out, and then COVID happened, so then it ended up years later going on to Paramount Plus, and we all kind of ended up watching it. I don't know if I remember, yeah. And I remember noticing that they had completely changed the ending, and so I don't know when they did the reshoots. That was a thing. It was like, this isn't what I remember. But I remember we had a whole there was like a bit of a plane, and it was an actual plane that they had like cut in half, and they had it on a rotating thing to make it look like it was crashing. And I remember thinking that was so cool. Just little things like that when you walk on set and you're like, oh my god, it's real. And you just like bump into random actors from Game of Thrones, which was like amazing, so cool. I think my favourite person was Dylan O'Brien. Was it Dylan O'Brien? Yeah.
Yeah, him and his little skateboard. Yeah. Oh god.
Sorry.
I know, I was just gonna say, I think it's just amazing when you, especially, I don't know what it's like for other departments, but in art department, it's so nice to see them still hand making or like 3D printing models, and then you look at the model and you can look at endless pictures or visuals, and then you see the real thing and you're like, my god, like it's come to life now. So you spend so long looking at something, how it's going to be, and then you see it in person, and it's just, yeah, it's just amazing. Like like you say, the level of detail that goes into these things to make it look realistic, and then they add all their little bits of CGI, and so you see all the little green strips, and it's just really strange when you watch the film, like how different it is to. I'm thinking of like Doctor Strange as well, because of COVID. They filmed everything at Long Cross. They didn't get any of their like locations, so they rebuilt all of New York Street. That cost them a fortune, and it was amazing. But they had a lot of CGI in it as well, so I think the actual film when it came out was quite different to how we'd been looking at it on all like the storyboards and stuff. So, but yeah, nonetheless.
Do you guys because I know all of us have pretty much worked on American films pretty much, even though that we are mostly London based for our work. We all have ended up working for Paramount or Netflix or Amazon, Marvel, keeping to them sort of where the money is coming from, and where our bosses are mostly LA based. And then since COVID, I know we all say we met just before COVID, and COVID struck, and it really affected the whole industry. But especially now with the strike and how we had the writer strike and then we had the actor strike, do you feel even now, so obviously we're filming this in the start of June 2024, do you still feel like there's a bit of a wave effect with how that's affecting the British film industry?
100%. 100%. I mean, if there's an issue, it's never going to be, even if it's fixed in the sense that a deal is made one day, it's going to take months and months to actually write out contracts and actually implement it. And it's so much cheaper to like get it sorted first and then start productions. Like, it's a lot more expensive to start productions up. Oh, there's a hiccup, shut it down again, go on hiatus. Because the problem is with a lot of like company things, and the only reason I've now learned this is because I myself have been looking into, like, I found my own company, so I have to then think of all these clauses, and it's never ever straightforward. Because if you hire crew under PAYE, you are bound by certain rules that you've got to provide X number of days like notice for stuff. You've got to take into account like maternity stuff. If you're a loan out, like for the company, that's a different matter, but the legislation isn't straightforward. So I do appreciate why things haven't bounced back as quickly as I think everyone wants it to. But, it's just one of those things where people are negotiating for better working conditions, better pay, and I fully get that and support that. That's really wonderful, standing in solidarity. But then even when the deals are made, we have to be understanding that it takes time to turn things around.
Yeah, because the BFI, I was shared it today actually, has just released how many films were in the last few years. Have you seen this as well?
I saw that today as well.
Yeah, and it's actually mental that 2 years ago, there's like just feature films, it was over 100, wasn't it? And this year alone there's only 22 being filmed in the UK, which is such a big, that's 80% less. Like it, and then because the unemployment rate in the British film industry right now is so high, and so many people are trying to go on to other careers. And I know all three of us have had this bounce as well, and kind of felt it, especially in COVID. I think COVID ended up being such a we all ended up not being, the whole of England didn't end up being in jobs for months on end. And then when we went back, there was such new restrictions and put in Group A and Group B, and Group A cannot go to set, but Group B has to be tested every single day, and it was such a weird, or a colour system or something. It was so weird. And I think that, and then the strike has just, for us who we're still pretty young in our industry, obviously we're all only gone up a couple of, either we're all pretty much still assistants or third assistants, gone up, you know what I mean, we've only gone up a couple of ranks, we've not gone up loads. And I think we've all ended up starting in the industry during this like horrible time of this uncertainty. So I do think, yeah, it's definitely it's affecting us all, and it's just interesting to kind of hear how we're all feeling about it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with both of you. It's been like, we joined, I think, at a good time, and it was nice to experience that on a first film, to see what it was like before the strikes, before COVID. And then obviously COVID, affected everybody massively across the whole world. I think they did really well though, to actually bounce back. And I do think it was so much busier during COVID than obviously now after the strikes are finished. I mean, I only know of 2 films currently that are being made in the UK. Yeah, it's just hard, a lot of people still haven't gone back into work, and it's a shame, hopefully it bounces back at some point soon, but we'll see.
I won't keep you both much for longer. The next 2 questions are still in this little bit of a somber area. Just kind of sticking with like this whole COVID restrictions and the strike, and I know you've kind of touched on it a little bit, Saffron, about, do you think that we should have more restrictions in the British film industry? This is more of a, because I think all of us collectively, especially because the first film we all ended up working on, so we all collectively know this, was a lot of injuries and people being tired and overtired and sleeping at the wheel, and people not being grumpy on set, and management training isn't really a thing in the industry. Do you think little things like that probably should, just kind of about the HR-ness? This isn't us talking bad about anyone, it's just about because we're freelancers that go job to job, there's not been this like pyramid set up for us. So have you got any thoughts about that, especially around the jobs that you've worked on? Don't have to give examples, that's not what I'm asking.
Okay, no worries. I mean, for disclaimer, like, this isn't me calling anyone out or holding anyone to an account for anything, because it's not an individual issue. It's generally a system-wide issue. So therefore, it's quite hard to point blame because it happens across the board sometimes. HR, sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. There was one job where we do have HR, and there was a contact that was made very clear to everybody that if there was a concern, this is who you speak to. I've never had to clarify, I've never ever had to like speak to any kind of HR representative for anything. I've been very lucky, more than most in regards to, I guess, treatment in the industry. But I feel like, as you touched upon, Livy, like the hours, the exhaustion, and therefore like injury on set, miscalculation, sleeping behind the wheel, like these are really real things, and I'd like to advocate for a safer industry in the future, but I can't really do anything as an individual right now because I'm bound to, I guess, the rules of what today's industry is. But it'd be really great if like unions in the future could be more strict with production companies or whoever is in charge of these kind of rules. I'd like to see more people be held, I guess, accountable for more humane hours. I know that there are some companies where it's not sanctions, but if you do over 11 hours, so in the contract, it might say that we will write you in for a contract of 11 hours plus 1 hour lunch, continuous working day. But if you go over that, you've got to, legally, you're supposed to have like 12 hours like rest between the hour you clock off and the next hour you clock in. But you and I both know that that isn't quite how this works. Like, you'll be working a late night, but you're expected to be on set or you're expected to be in work by a certain time for the next load of rushes and the next load of shooting. So sometimes productions will pay like a premium if you end up breaking that 12-hour turnaround. So there's always the financial incentive, but I think it's not the same as, you know, getting home safely. That should always be the precedent.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot about like hours going down on set as well, you know, like how we have a 12-hour 11-hour day. I think there's been a lot of discourse, especially with, this was before COVID. I haven't really seen it come up since about that being cut down, so that we only ever only did 9-hour days. And I think something like that alone, because it says 9-hour days, but hair and makeup can be there 4 hours before that, production can be there a few hours, production can be there longer after for the call sheet. I know, very similar. And I guess you know, if you've always got to get stuff done for the next day, you're around for much longer. So I know that will only really affect the onset, but I think it would have a trickle effect if we just knocked it by that 1 hour or 2 hours a day.
Very much depends as well on what department you're in. So I feel like I've been quite lucky, like with prosthetics, our usual like workshop hours were probably 8 till 6 most days, and then when we were on set, obviously the hours were longer, but I felt like we got treated fairly. We had some good people to talk to, not necessarily like a HR person, but we had like a person we could go to. So I think in that sense, I feel like I've been quite lucky, like with the workshop. I have some good hours, and it's just nice. It's nice not to feel overly tired. So
yeah, do you guys also have, this is probably going into it a bit again, it's kind of mixing into the how do we handle rejection, but also this worry of job to job, just because we are freelancers, and it's this, the uncertainty. And I know, Saffron, you've already said about you kind of have ended up with the same team, and I know, Megan, you said similar, that you ended up with the same team a couple of jobs, but then at the same time, sometimes that can sometimes only happen for a couple of jobs, and then you not fall out, like you just fall out of pattern with these people, so you can't get back on with a job with them, or because the industry is so big sometimes and it is so word of mouth. How do you guys feel with that job to job uncertainty and this rejection formula of the industry?
So at the beginning of my career in the industry, again, like I felt like I got quite lucky, and obviously just word of mouth and people that I met, I managed to go from sort of job to job. Obviously, more recently, my work has been quite inconsistent, although I'm always grateful for the days and the weeks that I do get making the horses and the bodies. But yeah, it's tough. Either, you know, you send out multiple or like so many emails to either not hear back, or you maybe get lucky and hear from someone. But yeah, it's tough. But I think it sort of makes you really appreciate the jobs that you do get, I think, like when you get them.
Yeah.
I always kind of phrase it to people that want to, you know, get in and they're looking for their first job, is that everyone is going to have this magic number. It's the number of times you get rejected before you get accepted. So in my case, I think my magic number was 7. I got rejected 6 times, and then on the 7th interview, I was offered something. And, you know, obviously it's daunting when you're job hunting full time, I suppose. You know, it is a bit of an uphill battle, but then once you do get something, obviously you're overjoyed. I think it's important to not take things personally. I feel a little bit the shoe's gone on the other foot now, where people are emailing me either for advice or can we grab a coffee and just, you know, talk about how you got in. Like, I don't know who these people are, but I want to help. Or even students at the academy. Like, you got to remember that when you get loads of emails every day and these little emails come through, like you do want to do your best by them and get back to them in a timely manner. But because there's so much going on, if you kind of picture the interviewer in that same situation, if they're not responding to you, it's not because they're deliberately being mean or ignoring you. It's just in their list of priorities, unfortunately, you come towards the bottom, and that's nothing personal. And, you know, sometimes you'll hear back, sometimes you won't. And it's just one of those things. And, you know, if you keep going at it, keep knocking on doors, one day a door will open.
I was actually going to say, I followed your friend Safi on Instagram a while ago, and I followed like all her stories and her updates on like how many times she'd been rejected from
Is this
jobs.
Bella?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when she got her job, I was so happy for her. And I think just as a whole, like all her following, they also just shared the same, you know, so she was just proving to people that you can apply so many times and eventually, you know, hopefully something will come through if you're
and she's also
determined
such
enough.
a brilliant advocate, like, because she does have a disability, and I feel like there is kind of this the industry is a bit ableist, because if your way to get in is to be a runner, like if you have a disability where you can't necessarily, you know, be super quick on your feet and turn things around in the time people perhaps expect someone to, that, you know, might put you at a disadvantage. So I think for Bella particularly, she should be so proud and really putting, you know, leading this to be like, look, doesn't matter like what your situation is, you can have a chance at this. So yeah, I'm rooting for it all the way.
I know. Bless her.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. I'm definitely seeing many more people on TikTok and Instagram kind of talking about mental health and issues as well, getting into the industry, and that stigma as well, because sometimes the industry is quite a nepo baby way in, even if they're not. Like, I've worked with people that you then find out that their father was one of the heads of the department, or their cousin is, like, especially with like electrical and stuff, and this is just a normal thing. This is normal in all industries. This is, you know, like a lot of the electrical guys, their children will also be electrical guys, and so I think there's like should be more talk about how to get your foot into the door, and taking away that stigma of just being someone's kid, and, you know, getting your foot in that way, but kind of open it up to all people, and kind of give it an accessible place to go in, because working in the film industry is so many people's dreams.
I feel like film and TV and like any kind of similar media industry, it is more of a lifestyle than a job. As Megs was saying, like the hours can be a bit unpredictable, work can be quite inconsistent, and it kind of suits more individuals than it does others. I mean, I do love it. I do acknowledge what the flaws are, and I'd like to think that in the future I can help, I guess, make it slightly better. But on the whole, I do love this industry. And I love, you know, working with creative teams and like being really proud of something you can make together with a team of people. And I think that should be, looked at and protected, because I remember, especially during COVID, there was some kind of like retraining scheme the government wanted to do. And it's almost like ignoring the fact that, oh yeah, that book that was written that you're reading in lockdown, that movie you just watched, like, are you trying to say these jobs aren't important? Like, there is a place for creatives and storytellers in the world. And it'd be nice if there was a better way and a more, I guess, open way to get more people in the industry. Because if you don't know about screen skills, or you don't know about the BFI, like, you can't just go to a job hunting board. Like, Indeed.com doesn't have this stuff listed, so it's a little bit closed shop still. So it'd be nice to open that up a bit more. I think the only thing people need to keep in mind, if they are wanting to get into the industry, is you might occasionally have to forego personal events in your life. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so if I sound awful, that's why. Is like, occasionally you might have to work Saturdays at short notice, and you got to be okay with missing out on your friend's birthday party on Saturday because you're needed in work. You might have to cancel evening plans because you don't know how late you're going to be. And it is just one of those things, like, it's a shame, but it's just the nature of the beast. So you got to weigh up the options. Like, do you mind moving around for work? Do you mind being a little bit sleep deprived? But all in all, for me as a person, I do quite like all that stuff, but I do know friends that maybe wouldn't enjoy that lifestyle so much.
Yeah. I think we all know that we love the film industry. As a reason why we're here. I think every now and again we still watch a film and we still get absolutely amazed by the craftsmanship. When people ask you guys, like, what do you do, and you say, oh, I work in the film industry, and they go, oh, what would I have known that you've worked on? What's the first thing now that you say, that's what I worked on?
Well, I like to surprise people by being like, so I make dead bodies and horses for a living, and they look at you like, what do you mean you make dead bodies and horses for what? I'm like, well, it's for films mainly. But yeah, when you say you work in film, some people can kind of get it mixed up if you catch my drift. Yeah.
I've never had that.
That's a new one.
That's
I think it's just
one.
you, Megs.
Okay, let's just move on. Yeah, and they're like, what do you mean you work in film? And you have to clarify, and you're like, oh no, I've done this. And most people are surprised, and then start asking you 101 questions, which is always nice. So yeah, got a good story now.
And the main thing that you always go on about is that you worked One Direction, right?
No.
That's your main thing.
No.
I would never shut up about that. I would always be like, I worked on one of the most iconic perfume ads ever. Anyway, what about you, Saffron?
I think the way I've responded to that question over the years has changed. I remember, like, when I first kind of got in, first couple years, I was like, oh, I'm a trainee editor for film. Like, I was really, really proud about it. And, like, rightly so, like, it's a really cool industry. But then as time's gone by, I've either, like, been quite aloof with my answer, or I'm like, oh yeah, I work in editorial, but, like, won't say what. Only because I've noticed that sometimes if I'm meeting new people, or whatever the situation might be, is if I'm like, oh, hello, I was a trainee editor on the Batman, they kind of like freak out in a good way, but then I don't like all the questions, and I don't want people to then change their behavior towards me just because they've suddenly deemed I'm cool. I'd rather they think, oh, you as an individual is cool, not the fact that we want to hang out with you for what you've worked on. So that's my take on it, but each to their own.
Yeah. Just to end with, is there anything that's coming out in this like year that you didn't probably you didn't work on it, but someone who worked on it, that you're really proud of them? Is there anything coming out soon that you're like, that's British made, very proud of that film, excited to watch it?
Oh gosh, I wish I'd been given this question ahead of time so I could have googled what's coming out.
I'll tell you for me. So I'm really excited to see Beetlejuice, because Beetlejuice was filmed at Leavesden Studios, and I think that's just so cool. And I'm like, this is going to be bits of it filmed in America, but I'm just really excited to see that come out.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know anyone who's worked on anything recently to be like, oh my god. But I remember being really proud of a load of people I worked with on arts department. They worked on Wicked, and yeah, that was really cool.
Oh my god, that's gonna be so cool. That's gonna be so cool for that to come back. I did I actually walked on the Emeralds, so it was part of the Emerald City set. I walked on it, and it was just so cool because it was just pure green, and I was like, but it obviously is different to a green screen. It was so weird, and I was like, this is so cool.
I've done a little quick Google. I've done a quick Google and I've racked my brain a bit because somebody did email me the other day to ask if I knew anybody who would be good for a trainee role on the new Jurassic film. So Jurassic World 4 is just started filming, I think, and it sounds like it is going to be based in the UK at L3 Studios. So that's a win for British industry. So that's great. That's starting. So I'm excited for that, but otherwise I think I'm just still living under a rock for a bit.
Yeah. But well, thank you both for doing this. I hope any of the listeners have, anyone who's trying to get into the industry or is in the industry as but that's it. I'm going to ask you both your socials, but I'll just quickly throw mine. So obviously this is Film Critic Life, and that is the handle on all TikTok, all Instagram and Spotify. So if anyone wants to like and subscribe, it's on YouTube as well. Share all of that such. But have you two got your Instagram handles or LinkedIn or Twitter? I don't know what you want to promo.
I've got an Instagram account, but I've only put one post. It's my SFX MUA Meg account. So yeah, you have to have a few followers on there.
My Instagram handle is at Safi Does Films. That's Safi spelled SAFFIE, and then Does Films as the words are spelled normally. I mean, yeah, that's I guess my public film account. I'm really bad at posting. I need to I've got stuff I'm meant to be posting and I haven't done for like months. But yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me that way, my DMs are open. I can hopefully pass on some advice. Otherwise, just follow along through my stories and posts so I don't post.
Anyway, thank you both so much. And goodbye to the listener, really.
Thanks, Livy.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.